Thank you very much, Mark. We have Jon Postel, who is known and loved by all as the one member of the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. The INET acts as the root of the Internet registry system throughout the world, and Jon will be giving us a small talk on the INET.
Well, thank you for having me today. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. It's a fairly small group. It consists of a little bit of me and a little bit of Joyce Reynolds, who's around here. Joyce Reynolds is acting as one of the co-track leaders of the users track at this conference, so you should be able to find her around. As I said, the INET is the root of the assignment tree. It's a very small little operation that then tries to delegate everything that takes any time to do out to somebody else to do the work. And we've had some talks here. The Internet is one of those what we call regional registries, although it also provides some other global services. There's the NCC is a regional registry, and the APN is another one. There's also, then those regional registries may delegate to national registries or provider registries. Some national registries that have been established, there's actually quite a few in Europe, but there's one for Brazil, one for France, that are assigned in protocols and used in operating the Internet system. The INET deals mostly with those things directly. About domain names and IP addresses, primarily INET deals with the unusual cases. Most of the normal business is handled very well by the providers, the national registries, and the regional registries. They do the bulk of the work. But an exceptional request for maybe a very large amount of address space or a new top-level domain would be referred to INET for some decision making. So the domain names, the kinds of things the INET is involved in is working with the regional registries to identify policies and practices. An example of a policy might be that, say, only four-year colleges are allowed to register in the EDU domain. In the registration area, the primary thing with domain names is checking on new country codes. The INET is involved in helping establish the criteria for registration. Often when people ask for IP addresses, they ask for a fairly large amount of address space without fairly sound justification. And so working with the regional registries, we come up with criteria or requirements for what information is needed to justify the request. And one of the things that became portions of unused Class A address space to individual service providers, but not a whole Class A, but only a part, one part to one service provider, another part to another service provider. And this may bring up some issues in how programs have been implemented and whether or not they can deal with this kind of subdivision of address space under a CIDR technique. So we've set up an experiment using one Class A address and allocating portions of it to various service providers to see whether this will actually work out in practice. Next slide. Yes. Some of these other parameters is that the INET deals with directly. We basically establish some criteria for the information that's needed to have one of these things registered. And there's things like the port numbers that are used under TCP, the protocol numbers that are used under IP, and it's the whole this whole registration process is very much a team effort in that the bulk of the work is done by the regional registries, the national registries, and the providers. The INET is a very small operation that tries to just keep a little bit of overall direction of the whole country.
I just wondered if, apart from wars, invasion and takeover and such like, there must be a reasonable limit to the number of countries that need registering. Have you got any idea how many you've got left to go?
I think the question is how many of the countries are actually registered with a couple of domain names. I don't have any idea off the top of my head, but I think it's actually quite a few. I think we're probably at least halfway through the possible list of countries. Probably more than half. The total FTEs is probably about half of FTE for the INET operation. The funding for the two of us comes through our research contract with Advanced Research Project Agency in the U.S. government.
Okay, but just a rough dollar figure, curiosity.
Anyone know my salary? I mean, it's in the ballpark of a couple $100,000 when you put in the computer time and overheads of the university and all that kind of stuff.
Please.
Just a question. Could you discuss just briefly the future funding models for the U.S. Internet and the issue of leasing?
Under discussion with National Science Foundation, the funding agency for our operation. So that's really all I want to say about it at this time. But if whatever comes out of it, it will be very reasonable. For somebody, it's very reasonable. Are there? Oh, and one more.
My comment about funding is that a pure model based on allocation fees is inherently unstable insofar as you're dealing with, if you will, cemetery plot funding, that an initial fee has to maintain a registry entry for an indeterminate period of time. And the problem is that if your amount of new business dovetails off, you're left with recurrent business which doesn't have funding. So the issue is not really leasing, but it's more a case of what degree of recurrent funding people who wish to register entities with you need to provide to maintain that registered entry. So therefore I think this issue is that registries do need, if you will, continuous resourcing to maintain continuous information.
Well, there's really two components of it for what we do. One is IPs, which really doesn't seem to be any good model for maintaining those entries right yet. On domains, there may be something that goes along of having an annual re-registration fee, where one would have to make sure that their entries are current every year. So that will help stabilize the model somewhat. And if it dovetails, I would expect that the demand on that service to dovetail also. So you wouldn't need as many people or as many machines, etc. Okay, thank you to all the speakers. Appreciate the talks. And finally, if I might take this